I used to think Cade was the love of my life. We met in college, and from our very first date, I felt like I was living in a movie. He was charming, funny, and made me feel like the only person in the world. We got married right after graduation, and for a while, it was perfect. We built a beautiful life together, bought a house, and were even talking about starting a family. I trusted him completely with my whole heart. I never once thought he would betray me. But life, as they say, has a funny way of surprising you. It all started subtly. He began working late more often, claiming he had big projects at the office. Then came the business trips, sometimes on weekends. At first, I was the supportive wife, packing his bags and wishing him well. I missed him, of course, but I believed in his career and wanted him to succeed. I'd text him good night, and he'd reply with a simple heart emoji. I told myself everything was fine, that I was just being paranoid. But a little voice in the back of my head kept getting louder. The turning point came on our 5th anniversary. I had planned a surprise romantic dinner at home. I spent the whole day cooking his favorite meal, decorating the dining room with candles and rose petals. I was so excited, but he never came home. He texted me around 10 p.m. saying he was stuck in a meeting and it would go on all night. I was crushed. I sat there alone with a feast for two getting cold. That night, I cried myself to sleep, feeling a deep gut-wrenching certainty that something was terribly wrong. I wasn't just being paranoid anymore. I knew. The next morning, I decided I needed to find out the truth. My hands were shaking as I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked his phone records, and there it was, in black and white. Hundreds of calls and texts to a number I didn't recognize at all hours of the day and night. The calls were longest on the nights he was supposedly working late or away on business. My heart sank. I felt a mix of anger, betrayal, and a strange sense of relief. At least now I wasn't crazy. I knew who he was calling. It was his new assistant, a woman named Stella. I confronted him that evening. I tried to stay calm, to present the evidence without breaking down. At first, he denied everything. He called me jealous, insecure, and accused me of snooping. But when I showed him the phone bill, his face went pale. He couldn't deny it anymore. The truth finally came out, piece by painful piece. It had been going on for 6 months. He claimed it was a mistake, that it didn't mean anything, that he still loved me. All the classic lines you hear in movies, but when they're said to you, they cut like a knife. I told him to leave. I couldn't even look at him. The man I had loved and trusted for years was a stranger to me. The days that followed were a blur of tears and paperwork. Filing for divorce was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. My friends and family were my rock. They rallied around me, brought me food, and just sat with me when I couldn't stop crying. It was during this time that I realized how strong my support system was, and how much I had neglected my own friendships while pouring all my energy into Cade. During the divorce proceedings, I learned more about his affair with Stella. It turned out he had been spending lavishly on her, buying her expensive gifts and taking her on fancy trips, all with our joint money. He had even been telling people at his office that we were having problems and were separated, laying the groundwork for his new relationship. The audacity of it all was staggering. It wasn't just a simple affair, it was a calculated deception. He had built a whole other life behind my back. The divorce was finalized and I got the house. It was a small victory, but it felt significant. That house was filled with memories, both good and bad, but I was determined to make it my own sanctuary. I repainted the walls, bought new furniture, and slowly, piece by piece, I started to rebuild my life. I went back to my old hobby, painting, which I had given up when I was with Cade because he said it was a messy waste of time. I found so much joy and healing in creating art again. I was rediscovering who Rosalie was without Cade. Now you might be wondering, what about karma? Well, this is where the story gets interesting. About a year after our divorce, I ran into an old colleague of Cade's. He told me what had happened. It turns out, Stella wasn't just an assistant. She had ambitions of her own. Once Kate was free, she expected him to marry her, but he hesitated. At the same time, his work performance had plummeted. He was distracted, and his boss noticed. Then, the company started looking into some expense reports, and they found a lot of irregularities. All those fancy trips and dinners with Stella that he had claimed as business expenses. He was fired. Not just fired, but let go for fraudulent activity, which made it nearly impossible for him to find another job in his field. When he lost his high-paying job, Stella saw the writing on the wall. She wasn't interested in a man without money or prospects. She left him just like that. I heard he had to sell his expensive car and move into a small run-down apartment. He tried to reach out to me a few times, sending texts saying he made the biggest mistake of his life. I never replied. His apologies were years too late. See, my life now compared to his is like night and day. My little art hobby? It turned into a business. I started selling my paintings online, and to my surprise, people loved them. I now have my own small gallery, and I teach art classes to kids on the weekends. I found a passion that not only heals me but also supports me. I've reconnected with myself and found a strength I never knew I had. Breaking up with Kate wasn't the end of my life. It was the beginning. It forced me to stand on my own 2 feet and build a life that was truly mine, a life I'm so incredibly proud of. It's not about revenge, but about my own growth and happiness, and that, I think, is the best kind of karma there is. Thanks so much for listening to my story. If you've been through something similar, know that you are not alone, and there is a bright, beautiful future waiting for you. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories. See you next time.